All right, welcome to the show. I'm the host, Bill Hargenrader, best-selling author of Mars Journey, Call to Action, and online community ambassador for the Mars Society. Today we have an awesome guest, the executive director of the Mars Society USA, Lucinda Offer. Lucinda, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So we're gonna read through your bio, and then we'll get into some of your background and some of your story, and you can tell us more about the Mars Society. So Lucinda has been an extremely effective executive director of the Mars Society USA, a role which she held in the past and now again appointed in 2015. She has devoted over 10 years to humans to Mars advocacy and analog research, and we'll get more into analog research and what that means. Positions included leading lobbying efforts in DC, PR director, and now the executive director. Completed Crew 97 in January 2011, rotation at the Mdrs, as a crew roboticist testing NASA Mars Society tele-operated exploration rover Sandstorm, as well as 4 NASA science expeditions researching Mars analogues to Saudi Arabia, Australia, the Mojave, and New Zealand. It's reading like we're in a thriller novel here. Backgrounds in geology, design, and science communication. Lucinda also combines those talents to teach physical and earth science concepts using visual communications. Wow, there's a lot going on here. So if you can just start off telling us, when did you know that you were interested in Mars, interested in science, and what did you do about it?
Well, I imagine it was, you as a young human being, you're massively influenced by your environment, your local environment. And my father grew up working for NASA and for Lockheed Martin, so I had some really rich experiences growing up as a young child. Things like well, for one, my father, which I love him, and I think it was very brave of him to leave. He grew up in a family community in Central California, and his parents owned a farm, and they had they were a Catholic family. And I'm of Hispanic background, so I'm a minority female as well, as well as my ethnic background as well. So I'm Mexican American.
Okay.
So it was a really amazing thing that my father did, which was he moved us from what he knew, farming life, to Silicon Valley. So step one, that was probably the most amazing thing he ever could have done for me or given his children, which is move us to a place that we had no idea was going to have the future that it is today in science and technology. So he moved us to Silicon Valley because he was working for, he had gotten his degree in electrical engineering. And his first jobs were at NASA, and eventually he worked and retired from Lockheed Martin in Palo Alto out on Sand Hill Road. So growing up, I got to do a lot of NASA events. I got to see when at NASA Ames is known for Hangar 1, which, if you've seen some images now, has its exoskeleton removed. It was full of a lot of toxic waste, and I think someone at Google's funding it and want to make it into an amazing space science museum, so I'm looking forward to that sometime. So I got to see things like the space shuttle tiles come off the conveyor belt.
Yeah.
Back in the 80s, because I've lived in Silicon Valley since 1975. So I've gotten to see some really amazing things there, obviously.
Yeah.
And so just all those rich experiences growing up, I've always had an affinity for human space exploration for that reason. And I don't remember exactly what it was. I guess it's probably sometime in high school, because I was always very interested in science, and I love my teachers.
Yeah. And
at some point, I was really interested in Mars. And I know sometime in 1989, I caught, then we had George Bush as president, the elder George Bush, and he had made an announcement, and I was so excited because it said that he was going to send humans to Mars in 1989. And that's when they actually also mentioned Dr. Robert Zubrin's Mars Direct Plan, and a cheaper, faster, better way to get humans to Mars. So since 1989, really, I think is when I've been a hardcore Mars advocate. But even before then, I used to get birthday presents which were books on Mars and Mars exploration. And even as an undergrad in geology, we used to talk about astrogeology back then in the 80s or early 90s, really. And we used to talk about, how are we going to learn about geology on Mars? And learning geology was important to me because I wanted to learn about the composition of the Earth so I could compare it to something that I really wanted to know about, which was the composition of another planet, Mars.
Yeah, no, it's I think it's interesting when you trace back to where, you know, Mars kind of seeps in. Like Mars is kind of, it's out there, and it's good that you can pinpoint that speech in 1989. For myself, I go back to journals from when I was a kid. I'm writing about Mars, and I'm like, I didn't remember I was, you know, it's there, and it's like an undercurrent that's just kind of you know, moving us forward. So that's pretty cool that you had that one exact speech. So before we move on, I'd like to kind of cycle between your story and the Mars Society. But for those who might not know, what is an analog and what is the MDRS, Mars Desert Research Station?
Well, for obvious reasons, we can't go and practice on Mars, right? So we create an analog. It's a simulation basically of what it would be like on Mars. So we're on Earth. We've chosen a very similar geology to Mars place, and there was a lot of care in choosing where the Mars Desert Research Station is right now in Utah, and it was specifically chosen for the geology there, and for the research that we could have students do there as they are crew. And so basically, you know, Mars Direct was an idea to send humans to Mars cheaper, and it had these tin cans in there, these 2-story tin cans. And so this group of really action-oriented individuals got money together, $1 million. That's a very expensive initially HAB, and built it out in the middle of the desert. And basically, we want to simulate living and working and researching on Mars. So we send crews of 6 out there for 2 weeks at a time. Typically, they are graduate students and researchers or PhD candidates. They could be researchers from NASA as well, or part of the NASA Academy. And there's a commander. There's another executive commander, like a second in command, and then there's your crew. And everyone has duties just as they were if they were living on Mars. It's very structured. I was part of Crew 97, and it was a lot of hard work. And a lot of the hours in the day were spent outside in sim. So we'd put on a simulated Mars spacesuit, and we'd simulate, you know, we wouldn't really simulate the time delay. We didn't really simulate the pressurization or depressurization of leaving or coming into the HAB. But what was it like to do geology as a geologist out on Mars, you know, with a spacesuit? It wasn't pressurized because that would be a completely different thing. But it is about learning about human factors. What tools would you need? What kind of things would you do? One of the things that I did when I was part of the crew was I was at NASA at the time, and I was testing a rover. It was a very expensive piece of kit that Google had helped us build. And so I brought the rover out there, and it turned on for me, and it worked. But I had to test what was the range with the resources of the facilities that we're using, the Wi-Fi, the connection, and all that stuff. And could we do it from inside the HAB? So that's just an idea of what goes on at MDRS.
Yeah, no, that sounds pretty cool. And was it fun for you?
Oh, that's a loaded question. I mean, every crew is different. And what I have noticed of crews is they become very close. They become very family-oriented. And I think the best crews are people who know each other beforehand, who have worked together already in some other environment, whether it's work or family, or you know, doing a certain activity together for months. And then they go in and live together as a crew because they're already tight. They already know each other. They already know how to work together and work through problem solving. When I did a crew, I was put on because I had just become executive director for the first time back in 2009.
Right.
And Dr. Zubrin said, okay, you're executive director. You need to know what it's like to be a crew member. And I said, absolutely. So it made sense to me. So he stuck me on with people that I did not know at all. And even though I made some really great friendships, some of them, not you know, it was a difficult group dynamic. It's difficult to get along with human beings. And so I realized the importance of that. The importance of really having a tight crew. You know, they talk about when you're at work, you know, doing group activities to bonding activities. That's really important. Working as a team is super important, and going to Mars, you're going to need that more than ever.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I would say that I went through Army basic training for 9 weeks, and for me that was fun. For most people, it wasn't. So it really depends on your disposition as well. So let's
Ours is only 2 weeks. 9 weeks is a whole nother.
Let's circle back to the Mars Society itself. How to come into being. Dr. Robert Zubrin, was part of it. Was he leading for this? What's the Mars Society story?
Yeah. Well, it's obviously around two different things. One, the Mars papers from the University of Colorado at Boulder, which was a bunch of undergrad students, as you might have seen the movie, the Mars Underground. It was Dr. Chris McKay, Dr. Carol Stoker, Dr. Penny Boston, and Dr. Robert Zubrin, who was actually the younger of that group, the youngest person of that group. And a lot of them work at NASA now. Matter of fact, Carol and Chris and Penny all work at NASA. Penny just got the position of director of NAI, which is NASA Astrobiology Institute. And Chris and Carol are both planetary scientists at NASA Ames, and I was lucky enough to work with Chris McKay. And Robert, who worked for Martin Marietta at the time, created Mars Direct back, and it was published back in 1989 or back in around that time. I think maybe even before that it was. But that's when I first heard about it in 1989. And then, well, these undergrad students at the University of Colorado at Boulder created research papers, and then they started to publish them. And Robert just had this idea to have a conference so they can get other people publishing part of these Mars papers. And a lot of people showed up to this event. And what happened was someone stood up and said, we should start chapters. We should start organizing ourselves. And so Robert, as he's great at just, or getting people to do things, to take action. That's really what the Mars Society is about. We're action-oriented nonprofit. And that's the best thing about what we do, I think, as we get people into action. We don't just talk about it. We don't just wish for it. We do it. So Robert said, stand up, move around to the tables, depending on where your locations are, that you're close enough to start a chapter. So every round table became a chapter, basically, around the United States. And from that first event started the very first Mars Society conference, and we're going to have our 19th this year, in September, end of September in Washington, D.C., the 22nd to the 25th. And then next year, it's not confirmed yet, but typically every 3 years we go back to Colorado, the University of Colorado at Boulder, where we started. And that's next year, and that'll be our 20th annual conference.
Nice. I'm headed to one in DC. I'm looking to head to one in Colorado next year. It'll be my first one. I'm looking forward to it.
Good. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, we're actually, myself and one of my partners in the with I Love Mars Media, we have a presentation on a hybrid approach Mars mission, essentially combining the different missions, Mars Direct, Mars Semi-Direct, Mars to Stay, Mars to Orbit, these different mission objectives, combining them into one hybrid mission so that essentially you could split the risk across different organizations, split the funding across organizations, and multiple people can achieve their objective at the same time. So that's what we'll be presenting on. I'll have to catch you up on that since you won't be at this one, right?
No, I won't be able to make it because I live in the UK now, and I'm actually starting my first position in teaching physics here in the UK. So I'll be starting September 1st. But just want to go back on the track talk you'll be giving and kind of the Mars papers. I think that's also part of the Mars Society is we have create an event for people to come together and share their ideas. And then the next step would be to make them a reality.
Oh, yeah. No, I love it. I love the action oriented. And that's because it can be fun to sit around and talk, but then at the end of the day, you just had a good conversation. I definitely the action oriented focus being kind of in the blood of the Mars Society from the beginning, I think is what sets it apart from a lot of people that just some people just want to watch a Mars sci-fi movie. Seems you guys really want to actually make science fiction a reality. So.
And don't get me wrong, nothing wrong with that. Nothing with partaking or getting yourself interested or educated and all that. It's just that's just who we are. We want to get things done. We want to create things. We want to move that conversation forward, literally.
No, totally. There's all kinds of people that the I Love Mars Facebook page and community. We've made up where we got people that are scientists next to people that are just sci-fi buffs, next to people that want to go to Mars, next to people that are just interested in science and never want to go. I personally am not allowed to go. My wife won't let me. I said maybe in like 50 years we'll talk it out. So let's circle back. We mentioned science fiction. Were there any movies, any books, anything, or what were some of your influences? You know, growing up, I mentioned your father, but anything stood out in the sci-fi realm that maybe got you excited, or not
Yeah,
sci-fi?
well, I have to admit, even though I'm not a Trekkie, the Star Trek reruns when I was a kid were a huge influence on me. Matter of fact, oh God, this is going to really date me, but I remember one of my most favorite precious gifts was a little record player. You know, you have a kid record player, and I actually used to have, I guess it was a 45 of the treble story of Star Trek.
Nice, nice.
So that's a huge influence, but of course, yes, you know, growing up, science fiction. I think the next big movie, and the next big movie that really influenced me was one that painted a very dystopian future, which was Soylent Green. That one really was a huge influence on me, and I think why I do what I do, and why others people might do what they do with wanting to send humans to Mars, is we want to create a better future. We want to get people moving in a direction of problem solving. Challenges are going to be difficult, but that doesn't mean they're impossible. And we want to create solutions to the world's problems. You know, we have problems here on Earth, and I think creating a challenge like sending humans to Mars, there are those offshoot solutions that will benefit us here on this planet. So, and that was proven with sending humans to the moon.
Sure.
So that's what we're trying to create here. It's just another opportunity for a growth for humanity.
I love it. So, well, and then in the near future, what are, for the Mars Society, what are some of the outcomes? What, I know you have the rover challenge, UK rover challenge going on, but what are some of the things that are going on in the Mars Society that are kind of cool?
other than our crew rotations, well, I mean,
Yeah.
we're coming up with so we usually do you know, these annual crew rotations at the Mars Desert Research Station, which are a big part of and take a lot of volunteers and a lot of really you know, enthusiastic people and determined people to get this sort of work done. And we're really grateful to have them on board who assist us to get these things done. But that only goes in the desert when it's cool, in the cooler season, because obviously it's too hot during the summer months like it is now. Yep. To hold crew rotations. And we've had them in the Arctic as well, in Devon Island. And of course, when it gets too cold there, we can't fly in because we're snowed out. And I mentioned to you that they're usually 2-week rotations. We have had 4-month rotations, but what we're going to do now is we're going to do the Mars Desert 80. So just a little bit of a longer crew rotation. We're going to do that at Mdrs, and then we want to do a Mars Arctic 80 to follow up with that, which is 80 days out in the Arctic. So those are kind of the new things that are coming up. Yeah. But going back to the rover challenges, that's really grown. Kevin Sloan, the director of the University Rover Challenges, has been doing that for 10 years now out of Utah. And wow. He's gotten a large number of applicants of university teams, I think 30 and above applications of teams who want to come out there. And from that, we've inspired one of our chapters, Mars Society Poland, who is an incredibly active, intelligent, you know, problem-solving chapter, I would say. And they created the European Rover Challenge, and they're now in their 3rd year. They're about to have a Rover Challenge September 3rd through the September, I think, 3rd to the 10th. Yep. I think it's a long one because they're also having a conference. And then this year, I'm from California, but I've been living in England for about 3 years now. And so this year, we just had a Rover Challenge in the UK, in Manchester, and that was amazing. We had.
So what is a rover challenge then? What happens?
Well, it's opened up to university students who are engineers and scientists, but that's not all. We also want them to bring in economists, maybe, or marketing and communication. It's not just going to take an engineer and a scientist. It's going to take other people as well with other skills and talents. A part of your crew that you bring to Mars, and part of the crew that you create to get a rover out there, because you need funding, you need you need to publicize it, you need the most difficult thing that stops these teams is travel arrangements. So sure. you need a good admin on your team, for instance. So we don't take those other skills and talents for granted as part of the Mars Society. We aren't just looking for the elite engineers and scientists. So in anything that we do, we realize that all human beings have skills and talents and can move us forward towards humans to Mars or space exploration. But as far as the rover challenges, it takes a team of many different talents. And so we get huge teams, 10, 13, 15 students all working together to create a rover. And depending on which challenge that they're going to, whether it's in Utah or in Poland or in the UK, they need to figure out their budget, first of all. And they need to make sure they can prove to us that they can afford to build and to ship their rover out to us. And then once they get to it, we usually have 2 to 3 days worth of obstacles or competitions where they compete against each other. And these are very robust, rigorous rovers. And this has been created through the work of Kevin Sloan, our director, and his executive team, who have held the bar high as far as standards and size and robustness of these rovers. They're really amazing to see what these students can do. They're not tiny rovers. They're as big as an ottoman for a chair. Yeah. They're really big, heavy rovers. They keep them under 50 kilograms, and they compete for who can get the most points through an obstacle course. Yeah. We'll have a mobility task. We'll have a navigation task, or we'll have an astronaut assist. If we have an astronaut that's in jeopardy on the ground, then a rover might have to go retrieve a first aid kit and bring it to the Marsonaut. So it's really a lot of fun. A lot of issues are like communications with the teams, and so they get to learn to troubleshoot in the field and how to communicate with each other, and also how to ask the right questions. That's a really big part of it too.
Yeah, no, that sounds super exciting. What if somebody's watching this? Maybe they're just now hearing about the Mars Society. What are some ways they can get more involved in the Mars Society in general, in a chapter, potentially even a rover challenge?
Send us an email. Say hi to us on Facebook. I mean, I'm constantly checking the messages on Facebook, and so I will respond to them, or our director of PR and media, Mike Stoltz, will respond to them. And I'm trying to do a good 24-hour, 48-hour response. You can email us, info@marssociety.org. I have a team that responds to those within 24 hours. And let us know what your interests are. Ask us if there's a chapter in your area. And if not, we will help you create one. I've got a really excellent person I'm working with right now. She's our coordinator. She's our chapter program coordinator. Her name is Nora Hovey, and you can email her as well. She's on our website. And she will help you set up a chapter anywhere in the world. And we love this work because it gives you an opportunity locally in your own community to inspire other people. And that's really what it's going to take. It's going to take inspiring the world, really. And we can't do it all ourselves out of Utah. We can't do it, it doesn't happen in a bubble. We need to get as many people as we can involved, and as many people out there doing these activities that inspire, that are fun. I mean, Mars Society for a long time has been a part of the spaceward bound NASA expeditions, where I've been, like you mentioned in my bio, I've been a part of 4 of those. And so I'll go out and I'll talk about the Mars Society, or I'll share out some Mars education materials. And we get to go to some different places in the world. I think they just came back. There was a spaceward bound that just ended last week that was in India, that was up in the Himalayas, very remote places, to do some research as well, but also to inspire young children at schools and education. Very important. So it doesn't matter, again, your background, your skills, what your interests are. We will find something for you to do. And we don't just want engineers and scientists. Everyone's important, and everyone has something to share and to inspire others with.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know the Facebook group's very active with Mike running and Mike Stoltz running that up. Lots of people who can be experts that you wouldn't even know. They might have a day job where they work for the water department, but their hobby is studying Mars. Their hobby is studying spacecraft, and you can just chime in. They'll chime in. It's a great experience. You guys just had a new chapter in Bangladesh. Is that correct?
Yes. So along with Nora's help, we have been, since The Martian came out last year. Nice. We have gotten so much interest in creating new chapters out of Ireland, out of Brazil, out of Argentina, out of Bangladesh. So we are getting a lot of emails right now. And so that's why I needed to bring someone like Nora on who can assist us with creating these chapters. So yes, Bangladesh is a brand new chapter. They're huge. They're this already established, they're all of Bangladesh engineering students in this one organization. And they came to us and said, we'd like to start a Mars Society. And for the sole purpose of, well, inspiring others, but also they also want to do their own rover challenge in Bangladesh. So well, that's a great idea, because we have had Bangladesh teams come out to Utah, and we had 5 teams come out that were part of our UK rover challenge that we just had, but a lot of them had travel issues with visas or getting their rover out there. So it'd be great if they had one locally, and we would assist them in creating that.
That's awesome. I love it. I really do. So we're gonna let's switch to something a little more personal. So somebody that, let's go to your personal journey. You've done a lot of different things. You follow your passion, through science, through executive director. What's maybe a piece of advice, 1 or 2 things of advice, somebody that might just be starting off, whether they're a female, minority, or not, but somebody that they're passionate, they're not exactly sure what they want to do, but they know they have an interest in this field. What's something you might tell them, or might even tell your younger self, for instance?
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, my background, I probably wear 2 hats, right? I wear an art hat, because I really, my background is in art and design, and I wear a science hat. I do research, and I, my background's in geology. So I wear those 2 hats, and I try to find a way that I could put those together in teaching. And to be honest with you, one thing I didn't mention was it was this teaching path that brought me in contact with the Mars Society.
Okay.
One of their conferences, they were having a teacher education day, and they invited one of the educators from NASA to do a presentation. And I drove 10 hours out of the state of California to attend this conference, and I'd never done that before. So, and that brought me to teaching. So whatever you're passionate about, it doesn't really matter what it is. It could even be cooking, right? That sounds, oh, how can I connect cooking to Mars? Well, for instance, we've had a food science researcher, Dr. Hunter from Cornell University, doing food science research at the Mars Desert Research Station for, goodness, I don't know, over 5, maybe 8 years now. And now she's gotten a huge other project going on in Hawaii called High Seas, and that's from food. So it doesn't really matter. Whatever you're passionate about, well, if you'd like to, email me, you're welcome to, and we can have a talk about it. But really, anything you do or that exists on Earth is going to eventually be needed wherever we decide to go live at. And my choice would be Mars. My first choice would be Mars. One of the most important, I think, jobs that we've ever needed is not an engineer or a scientist. It's usually like a plumber or a carpenter. Someone to fix things is usually a mechanic. Those are the ones that are super in need, and on any crew rotation, and definitely as a volunteer for the Mars Society to maintain the infrastructure, the hab, and everything. It's a lot of work. So. I would say do what you love, do what you're passionate about, and do your best to make the connection to Mars. And if you need some help, email me. I'd be happy.
Yeah, and while you were telling me this, it actually reminded me of the story you were telling in the beginning about your father, who moved you guys to a strange new place with lots of potential. Hopefully, how there's a nice analog there for trying to get the human race to a strange new place with lots of potential. So it kind of comes full circle there.
Yeah, and look what happened to Silicon Valley.
There you go, right? It worked out. It worked out for Silicon Valley. All right, so we're coming to the end of the show now. You just want to you mentioned some things about the conference going on. You mentioned ways to connect. What's this one kind of parting thing you'd say about the Mars Society? You've already said a lot, but what's one thing that you would just want to leave the audience with before we wrap things up?
Yeah, we are an action-oriented nonprofit. We're grassroots, made by people who give their time, and I know your time is precious, but it's valuable. And if you're interested in making a difference for others, and I see this as really an exercise in making a difference for humanity. And as a teacher who got inspired by Humans to Mars and by Mars Society and by NASA, that's really my main focus is reaching the younger audiences. But we're action-oriented. So, I mean, it's lovely that you talk about it. It's lovely that you think about it. When you're ready to do something, come and join the Mars Society. We could definitely use someone like you.
I love it. No, that's great. That's a great parting message. And you've been an amazing guest. We could talk, and we have talked for hours and hours on this, but we're gonna wrap things up for now. So for those listening, those watching, thanks for joining in. Thank you, Lucinda, for taking your time out. And look for more of these shows that are they're coming at you in the near future. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Bye, Lucinda.